trees, a lot of us feel fairly protective, but we know that we're also pretty protective of making sure our power is on, and sometimes power and trees don't mix. We know that SA PowerNetworks has a program of continuing to prune trees to make sure that the trees are not inhibiting or stopping in any way them from carrying out their duty of transporting the power. But over the last 12 months, a trial has been underway in the Campbelltown Council of injecting a certain chemical into trees in some of their areas to see whether they stunt the growth of the trees and therefore will limit or at least minimise the amount of pruning that needs to be done. Now, how safe is this chemical? What sort of response has it received in the first year of this 3-year trial? We thought we'd find out a little bit more about this as we speak with Paul Roberts, spokesperson for SA PowerNetworks. Hello, Paul.
How are you going, Sonia?
Very well, thank you. Now, we're going to speak with the man in charge of the trial at Campbelltown City Council in just a while. But, Paul, just explain to us some of the challenges you face in trying to deliver power to people's homes.
Well, I guess the challenge we face is actually sort of balancing that requirement that we have legislatively to trim trees around power lines, and that's to do several things. One is to obviously minimise the risk of bushfire in bushfire risk areas. Another part is also to minimise the risk of electrocution, electric shock to people in any kind of environment, urban or regional, and also to reduce the potential for fires that may stem from trees interacting with power lines, and also obviously to minimise the number of outages that occur because of trees contacting power lines. And that's responsible for about 40% of outages in the eastern suburbs where we have a large number of trees.
So up until this stage you've been using, I believe, pruning methods, which sometimes have come under a bit of criticism because you have to be quite severe at times.
Well, that's right. Well, the clearance requirements are basically require us to cut a sort of rectangular box shape around a line, so the outcome of that is not necessarily always good, and we're also limited in doing sort of balancing pruning unless the council agrees to us doing that. But it is a challenge. We've been working for about 3 years now with local government, and we've developed a very detailed protocol around how we might approach tree trimming, sort of really actually move from what might have been described as a pruning regime to a tree management regime cooperatively with councils. And that's actually gone very well, that discussion, and it's led us to looking at a number of options to manage trees around power lines. So trimming's always going to be a bit of a core thing that we're going to have to do, and that really relates to just the sheer fact that we've got a very large number of unsuitable trees planted under power lines, which grow through and around power lines, and we're really sort of paying the cost of that now in terms of trying to manage the outcome of that.
Just while we look at that, though, exactly. But Paul, is that still the legacy of those decisions, or are those decisions still being made?
I would say a bit of both. We do from time to time see unsuitable trees being planted, but I think there's a lot more recognition within local government. Obviously, in the last 10 years, they've been seeing what the outcome is. We've been talking a lot more. We've done work, in fact, with the Botanic Gardens with its tree selector. There's specified species for planting in and around power lines. There's now an online tool that people can use, which is a tree selector tool. If people search for that, it's actually got information about the kind of trees and shrubs that should be planted around power lines. So there's been work in that area about reducing this, but it really is something that, we started planting trees in Adelaide, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. When I was a kid, there weren't so many. Now you see so many trees. It's fantastic, but it does have an impact on our power supply.
Okay, so when it comes to the pruning side of things, what has made you get to the point where you believe that perhaps stunting the growth of trees might be a better option? What's the thinking behind that?
Yeah, well, it's really, the thinking is there are a number of alternatives to trimming. And look, the most severe alternative, and it's actually quite suitable in some circumstances, to actually physically remove the tree and replace it with something else. And in circumstances like the trees may actually be reaching the end of their lives, they may be getting more unstable, or they're unhealthy. and there's an opportunity to work with councils, and we have been doing that with some councils in the hills and in the Barossa to remove some trees and replace them with more suitable trees. We've also been looking at, we do have the option of alternative treatments, such as we can insulate some wires, and we'll do that particularly for sort of heritage, if you like, areas. We have the option of some network reconfiguration, but that's very expensive. So the people say, well, why don't you just underground the power lines? Well, that is an incredibly expensive option, and not really, it's not funded by the regulator. But we can find others, and if a council wishes to underground, then the council can actually fund that. But what we found is by negotiation with councils, we can look at some alternative arrangements, including, as I say, removal, but also removal and replanting of trees, but also some of the other treatments, and the council can contribute to that. But in this case, sorry.
No, go finish your thought.
Sorry. Yeah, but in this case, what we're saying is there are some trees where there's clearly a very significant desire to retain the integrity of those trees, the look and shape, and some of them are about urban areas, obviously, rural townships, but also more tourist drives into towns, heritage areas such as memorial trees and that sort of thing, where we think that this could be a viable alternative, but only in a targeted way. It's not ever going to replace widespread trimming of trees. It is more expensive than tree trimming, and it's really about those more highly prized areas that we would be doing it.
Okay. Now, Paul, I guess ultimately, though, when it comes to this, and you said you work with councils on this, but what power does SA PowerNetworks have to instigate what is necessary? You know, who gets the final say? Well,
we're obliged by legislation to meet trimming requirements.
Yep.
But we have some leeway in what are the low risk areas. So obviously around a high voltage line, we've really got no leeway. We must cut to the clearances, but there is a more risk management approach to low voltage, so the 240 volt. And the challenge for that is in a street in say Norwood, where we're trimming now, we would quite often have an 11,000 volt line sitting above a 240 volt line. So the requirements for trimming around the 11,000 volt are much more severe, and then we can't take the same risk-based approach as we can with the lower voltage underneath it. So that does cause understandable concern and confusion when we have to explain, well, yeah, with that one underneath we could maybe be a little bit more generous, but with the one above we've got to go to a very specific clearance.
And so, Paul, when it comes to which method you choose out of the options, is that your call as the power provider, or is it the council's call?
Well, probably ultimately it's our call, but if the council's, for example, willing to pay for the undergrounding of lines in a particularly sensitive area or some other network treatment, we'd clearly consider that, because we prefer to be doing that than trimming trees, because in any way in which we can reduce ongoing year-on-year cyclic maintenance of trees is a good thing for the community, because in the end it's the community that pays for tree trimming. It's a recognised cost. It's one of our major costs. It's about $40 million a year to trim trees in South Australia.
Wow, it's a big cost, isn't it? Paul Roberts is spokesperson for SA PowerNetworks. We'll continue this discussion, and you might want to add your views. Would you be open to this chemical that perhaps stunts the growth of trees over and above what some say is quite brutal and severe trimming of trees that is required, and in fact is the SA PowerNetworks is obliged to do in some instances? Or are there some concerns about that? We'd love to have your views, but in a moment we'll find out what the tree experts think. We'll be speaking to the tree management officer who is managing this particular trial. It's 17 minutes past 1.
The adventures in comedy.
Peter Gers.
It is the most difficult thing to do, I think, because you've got nothing, just yourself and a microphone, if you're lucky.
Sometimes you don't have a microphone.
Sometimes you don't have a microphone. I've thrown them away.
Weeknights from 7.
And you can't be fazed by people asleep.
There's only one Peter Gers.
I did one in Victoria.
That was your first mistake.
Peter Gers, weeknights from 7.
On ABC Radio Adelaide.
On ABC Radio Adelaide, this is Sonia Feldhoff.
Yes, the first year's results are in on a chemical trial to stunt the growth of trees near power lines as a potential alternative to pruning trees quite severely for SA PowerNetworks. Let's find out a little bit more about this trial. Henry Harvisto is the Tree Management Officer at Campbelltown City Council. Hello, Henry.
Good afternoon, Sonia. Good afternoon, Paul.
Thanks very much for your time. Now, what chemical is in fact being used?
It's a chemical by the name of paracetamol. It's a growth regulator. So it actually, excuse me, it sort of works with the hormones of the tree, and it sort of tricks the tree into slowing down its growth.
And after year one of this 3-year trial, what are some of the results you're seeing?
We've seen some of the trees that have actually reduced in growth by 50%. Other trees hasn't affected them at all. But, generally out of the 7 species that were trialled, 5 of them were definitely reduced in growth.
Now, when it reduces in growth, does it have any other impact on the tree?
No, other than that, it reduces the what we call the growth extension. So the year's growth is not as long as what it normally would be. In some cases, like I said, it was up to 50%.
Now, is this a chemical that is used in any other circumstances to stunt growth?
Yes, it's been used in the horticulture industry, the mango industry, for many years to trick the trees into producing fruit at different times of the year. So we have mangoes, coming through at a steady flow through the year instead of having them all at the same time.
So is that sort of to reduce the amount of energy into growth and more into fruit production?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So you could sort of say we're sort of playing God, so to speak.
And has there been any deleterious effects seen from the use of this chemical? Obviously, it's positive in this area.
Well, I did some research before we entered into the agreement, and there was nothing found in any of the research that I had a look at, and luckily with just having an amenity tree, there's no chance of anyone eating anything. So fingers crossed that the studies that have been into it have been correct.
So a third of the way through the trial, it looks like it's achieving, in most instances, what it was setting out to do. Yes.
And it's quite surprising, because I thought with the weather we had last year, we had a very good season for tree growth, with the constant rain and the warm weather, and I didn't think it would be as successful in the first year as it has been.
Now, Henry, as far as this chemical goes, and it's not one I'm particularly familiar with, but is it paracetamol, did you say?
Yes, that's the one.
Paracetamol. Yeah. Anything to do with chemicals always has to be used fairly carefully. Yep. What sort of precautions do you have to take so that it's only the trees that are impacted by this?
Well, it was applied by some professional arborists that use it for other projects. They use it for reducing hedges and plantings on roundabouts. So there is a science behind it. You just can't go down to Bunnings and grab a tub of the stuff and put it on your trees. Mm-hmm. You do need to do some calculations on the amount of material that you apply to the tree. So all the trees that we had, each one was measured, the circumference of the tree, and then from there, using a formula, the doses were applied to the tree. So, you didn't put too much into the ground, because it's an expensive chemical, so you don't want to be just, putting too much in the ground. So it was all very regulated and, trying to get the most out of the product.
And how specific does the injection have to be? I guess what I'm getting at is there a risk to plants or people or watercourses by doing that?
Well, all the trials that we had, they were in streets where, basically you had paved footpaths and paved roads. So, there was no chance of any chemical being, released into the watercourse or anything like that. It was put directly into the ground, and basically around the base of the tree.
We've been seeing some heavy rains of late. Is there any chance that it runs off and into stormwater and out to oceans or anything like that?
Not that I know of, because the rate is a measured rate. so there shouldn't be any residue left in the soil.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to break down to an inert material.
Jane on our text line says, stunt growth for street trees, let's have it for other trees too. I have to get rid of my trees as the previous owner planted the wrong ones and they're way too big for my block. Small trees would be great. Henry, maybe people would like to see this go further from the sounds of things.
Yeah, well, I also looked at the point of, we go through these drought periods and, trees become highly stressed because they're not getting the water. If they got a dose of the chemical before a drought, it might keep them instead for the harsh times. So I'm also looking at it as a bit of a tonic as well, besides the power line side of things.
Yeah. Rick from the Barossa rang to say this really upsets him. One day when we've finally figured that power lines need to go underground, we're going to want bigger trees. What happens then? And another says, leave nature alone. But Henry, I guess you were brought in to look at this because of what Paul was saying earlier, that the necessity to trim trees because of power lines, the obligation is there. It's just the best way to do it. And I've been talking about these things long enough to know that a lot of people get very upset when trees get pruned extremely badly or severely to make that happen. Do you see this as being a better option for the plant, given you're in charge of this? You're in charge of trees. Obviously, you've got a particular bent for them as well.
Oh, definitely. And when you have a tree that because they are a natural thing, and we can't sort of box them into a certain size. There are dimensions that they grow to, but they don't always meet that size. So some tend to grow a bit more than others. So I'm just also thinking that if we get to that stage where they're about to be pruned, give them a dose of the chemical, and they won't have to be pruned at all. So that's one of the things I'm also very keen to see. So there's many, you can't use it for all the trees, but if we have a different approach to it, hopefully we can be a lot more sympathetic to the trees.
Yeah. So Henry, in a way, you think this is a kinder option on the trees than the heavy pruning?
Oh, absolutely, and you're not wounding the tree, so there's no physical cuts, for the potential to get disease or fungus into them. So you're not actually physically harming the tree. So I see that as being a big bonus for it. What
happens now over the rest of the trial, Henry?
Well, we've got to talk to our friends at SA PowerNetworks. They're the sort of the custodians of it. So we'll be keen to keep it going. All dependent on those guys, and we'll just see how it pans out.
Henry Havisto, Tree Management Officer at Campbelltown City Council, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
It's 26 minutes past 1 here on ABC Radio Adelaide. We're taking a look at this trial that's underway in the Campbelltown Council area, which is an injection of chemicals into some of the street trees to try to stunt their growth. These are trees that are near power lines, and looking at an option to severe and sometimes extreme pruning, which is an obligation to make sure that safety is surrounding those power lines. Let's talk with Travis Wiper now. Now, Travis is the Managing Director of Pinnacle ArborPro. Travis, thanks for your time.
Hi, Sonia, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Paracetamol apparently is the chemical we're talking about here. What do you know about it?
We know a fair bit about it. We've been dealing with a company within the States called Arbor Scientific. It has been used in the utility industry over there for in excess of 10 years. So there are a few cycles through the program, and it actually forms an integral part of their tree management solution over in the States.
And a successful one?
It has been successful, yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to this chemical, it sounds like, as far as this trial at least is going, it's been extremely successful in achieving its aim. For many people, they want to be assured about the rest of the chemical potential impacts. Have you noticed any with it, as if it's injected perhaps slightly incorrectly, or if there's heavy rains?
Well, we've done a lot of research into the types and the rates that are applied per species. So, as Henry outlined before, it is very much calculated. So we do understand the doses per tree species. In regards to the leaching of the chemical into soil water or into rivers or creeks, it does bind very, very tightly to the soil molecule, so it doesn't move. There's been a lot of research done, independent research done in regards to leaching tests where they apply the chemical to the soil and then put a flood of water over the top and then measure how much has moved. And it's bound very, very tightly to the soil molecule, so it doesn't move too much.
Okay, so in all efforts that you've tried, it seems to be a relatively safe chemical to use in this way.
Mm-hmm. It has been used. It's currently so the product is paclobutrazole, which is it has been used extensively through Australia already. It's used in the fruiting industry, in the stone fruit industry. It's also used in the turfing industry as well. So it has been used. It's not a new product to Australia. What we're doing is applying it and changing the use of the product.
So did you say it was used in the fruiting industry?
In the stone fruit industry.
Okay, so this is a product that we eat and it has no side effects in that way?
That's right. It's already labelled in Australia.
Yeah.
As part of and it's got a label for stone fruit.
And the turf industry, is that for things like grass on sporting fields, is it?
Yeah, just reducing the amount of times they have to cut the grass.
And all of that has been a pretty, I mean, they sound like pretty innocuous kind of results then.
Are they in regards to toxicity levels?
Yeah.
It is quite a benign product. It works on the reduction of a hormone, a gibberellic acid in the tree, which basically, as Henry alluded to, it tricks the tree into the reduction of that hormone.
Is this sort of what happens when we get dwarf trees? Excuse my ignorance if I'm on a completely wrong tangent.
Not so much. No, that's more. A lot of those is to do with the way that's cultivars or different the way that they've been produced or cross-pollinated with different species.
Okay.
Yep.
One of our texters says, does it work on weeds? I think we'd all like those to be reduced and stunted.
It does work on weeds, but I don't know how effective that would be in regards to application.
And from the sounds of the cost of it, it might not be, might be a fairly high cost to get rid of them at the same time.
Probably more effective ways of getting it.
Yeah, sure. Travis Wiper is my guest. He is telling us all about this active ingredient in this chemical. If you have any concerns about it or some questions about it, feel free to give us a ring, 1300 222 891, or you can text on 0467 922 891, as Wendy has. Hello, Wendy.
Good afternoon. I'm just following on from the last gentleman. I can't see the difference of when you fertilise a tree and put things in so the roots take it up, and it has effect on the growth, etc., that doesn't go to the fruit. And I have been noticing in the orchards and other places in several districts that the trees are kept, stone fruit going down to Victor, are kept at a certain height, and I thought, well, that saves labour and time and you can pick quicker because it's all at a reasonable height. But I can't see how that poison is not going to in some way go to the fruit, the mangoes, the whatever.
So you're talking about even what we term the positive stuff, the fertilisers and things like that, Wendy, are you?
Yeah, well, they go into the roots of trees and you put them around there and all the rest of it. Well, if you're going to put this in there and up there or whatever way they do it, it's got to go right through the tree to be absorbed to have that effect.
All right, thanks for your call, Wendy. Let's put that to Travis Wiper. I mean, does Wendy have a point there?
Well, what happens is the hormone is stored up in the meristem, the apical meristem, which is right in the tip of the tree. So where the leaves grow from. And so what happens in regards to fruiting production? It's the effort and the energy that a tree normally puts into growth. It gets pushed into different functions inside the tree. so it gets pushed into more fruit production. So it doesn't actually get stored in the fruit, it actually gets stored in the apical meristem, but the reason why you get more fruiting and more flowering and those other things is because it pushes the energy normally used to grow into other functions.
And Travis, when it comes to a trial like this, I mean, are there any concerns that people should be aware of, even those people living nearby to trees that are being injected with this paracetamol?
So if there is so if you have a garden bed that's directly beneath the tree, that's within, so the trees are injected using a probe of about 5 centimetres that gets pushed into the soil profile, and if there's garden that's directly around those trees.
So if you've gardened out the verge, for instance.
Yeah, those garden plants will also will have a reduction in growth as well. So, which in some cases that may not be what a particular customer would want. But in regards to any other functions, so it does regulate smaller plants around the trees, but it doesn't leach into your garden bed or anything like that. It's directly at the point of treatment.
Travis Swiper, thanks for your time today, Managing Director of Pinnacle ArborPro. There's a couple of questions coming through on our text line and from our listeners just in relation to notifications, for instance. So let's return to Henry Havisto, Tree Management Officer at Campbelltown City Council. Henry, are homeowners warned that this chemical is being used outside their houses?
Yes, we produced a flyer, and that was letterboxed to all the people that had the trees out the front, and you were given the opportunity to either opt out and we would just go to another tree. But we didn't have anyone that was, freaked out about it, which was pretty good actually.
No one resistant to the plan?
No.
And you said 7 trees where it was trialled on, 5 that it was successful with. Which were those 5 species or 5 types of trees?
The ash, the pistachio, the Chinese elm, and the robinia. They were the ones that were successful. Jacaranda at this stage didn't show any reduction, and the Queensland box.
Okay.
But it's not to say that if you give them a second dose, they will change their habits.
And is there any warning to homeowners that they may experience adverse effects? I mean, now a year in, you're probably quite happy with the results, but at the beginning, I guess it's a little unknown.
I think because it's regulated. It's like I was saying earlier. It's scientifically done. So there's the chemical that's put in there is definitely regulated. So you don't have any spills. It's like Trav was saying, it's injected into the ground. So I think the only real way that you could possibly be affected by it is if you came straight after and ate some of the dirt.
Okay. And no adverse effect on our water system. We talked about that earlier. Have you noticed any adverse effects at all?
No, not at all. Not at all. All that we've seen is, those particular species, there has been a reduction in the growth. So they don't have those long shoots like they would normally have. And the canopy seems to be a lot more tight. So, it looks promising.
All right. Good to talk with you. Thank you for your time. Henry Havisto, Tree Management Officer at Campbelltown City Council. We also thank Paul Roberts, spokesperson for SA PowerNetworks earlier. Just looking at some of the texts that are coming through on this one. Philip says, and of course, just as I do this, my system decides to refresh. That's all right, we're getting back to it now. I commend SA Power. I worked in Energix Queensland for 24 years, and the worst issues with our 1 million customers was tambourine, where the customers in rural mountain areas hated the bonsai approach to pruning, yet were the first to complain about lack of continuity of supply during the Queensland storm season. People who say underground is lack of knowledge, it's cost prohibitive. Well done to SA Power Networks. Large trees should be removed, says another texter. They are dangerous and unpredictable regardless of power lines. Michelle at One Tree Hill says, I have low voltage power lines on my property. They come in annually and butcher my trees. I have even offered to pay to have the power undergrounded, but SA Power refused to give me a price. And in relation to this trial in Campbelltown, one says, don't worry about Ross Trevor. There are not many trees left anyway. We have a huge gum tree out front. Almost none others are left. And this point from Andrew at Prospect, who says, remember SA PowerNetworks put a loading on all the activities it undertakes, so the more work done equals more opportunity to charge. They are not going to lessen the amount of work they undertake, as that would reduce their income. This is probably just another opportunity to charge for services and charge extra if they can swing it. Well, I think this is something being undertaken by the council, as I understand it. In conjunction with SA Power. Maybe they're funding it together. I probably should have asked that one. Stunt growth for street trees. Let's have it for other trees too, says Jane. And don't know why Campbelltown Council and how many trees, as most of the trees in this area are being cut down anyway with all the development going on around this area. And at Selleck's Beach says, my cynical nature sees this as a way to protect views and real estate values in particular suburbs of Adelaide. Although this texter says, I think my parents gave me this chemical when I was young. I have Duck's disease. Good on you. It's 21 minutes to 2 here on ABC Radio Adelaide.